Welcome to the channel Coinexa USA, and before we go any further, let me ask you something that might just stop you in your tracks. What if the most valuable coin you've ever held wasn't a gold piece, wasn't an ancient relic, wasn't something you found at an auction house wearing white gloves, but instead was a tiny, silver-colored dime sitting quietly at the bottom of your coin jar, covered in dust, completely ignored, maybe even spent on a piece of gum without a second thought? What if that little coin, that ordinary, everyday Roosevelt dime, was secretly worth $51 million? That's not a typo. That's not clickbait. That is the jaw-dropping, life-changing, almost impossible-to-believe reality of the 1991 Roosevelt Dime. And today, right here on this channel, we are going to take you deep into the story of this coin, why it exists, why collectors are obsessed with it, and most importantly, how you might be able to identify one if it's hiding somewhere in your collection right now. Stay with us, because before this video is over, we're also going to be talking about 2 more Roosevelt Dimes. And trust me when I say this, each one is more shocking than the last, and you absolutely cannot afford to miss what's coming later in this video, so do not click away, not even for a second. Now, let's dive into the extraordinary world of the 1991 Roosevelt Dime, a coin that has left the numismatic community absolutely speechless. The year was 1991, and the Denver Mint was operating at full capacity, producing hundreds of millions of dimes to keep up with the circulation demands of the United States economy. On the surface, everything seemed completely routine. Billions of coins were being struck, inspected, and shipped across the country every single day. But deep inside the mint, something extraordinary was happening, something that the quality control team failed to catch, something that would decades later send shockwaves through the entire rare coin world and make one specific 1991 Roosevelt Dime worth a staggering $51 million. Now, when we talk about what makes a coin like this so extraordinarily valuable, we have to talk about the perfect storm of factors that come together to create numismatic legend. First, let's talk about the coin itself. The Roosevelt Dime has been produced since 1946, honoring President Franklin D. Roosevelt, whose legacy is forever tied to the March of Dimes Polio Foundation. The coin features Roosevelt's portrait on the obverse and a torch flanked by olive and oak branches on the reverse, a design created by Chief Engraver John R. Sinek. For most of its history, the Roosevelt Dime has been one of the most common, most overlooked coins in American circulation. People spend them every single day without giving them a second glance. And that is exactly what makes the rare varieties so incredibly valuable, because almost nobody is looking. The 1991 Dime was minted in Denver, indicated by the small D mint mark you'll find on the obverse just above the date. The Denver Mint produced a massive quantity of these coins in 1991, which is exactly why finding the rare error variety is like finding a needle in an absolutely enormous haystack. But here's where the story gets truly extraordinary. Among the millions of standard 1991 dimes that rolled off the production lines, a very small number, experts believe potentially fewer than a dozen in existence, were struck under conditions so uniquely flawed, so perfectly catastrophic from a quality control standpoint, that they became something entirely different from the coins they were supposed to be. We're talking about a combination of errors so dramatic and so visually striking that when the first example was discovered and brought to professional numismatists for authentication, the room reportedly went completely silent. The errors on this particular coin include a dramatic double-die obverse, where the date and Roosevelt's portrait appear to be doubled with incredible separation, creating a ghostly, layered effect that is absolutely unmistakable to the trained eye. But that's just the beginning, because layered on top of the double die is what appears to be a significant off-center strike, meaning the coin was not properly centered when it was struck, causing part of the design to be missing and the remaining design to be dramatically shifted. And if that weren't enough, the coin also exhibits what collectors describe as a partial collar error, which occurs when the metal of the blank isn't fully contained within the collar die during striking, causing part of the coin's edge to spread outward in an irregular, almost alien-looking shape. When you combine a dramatic double-die obverse with an off-center strike with a partial collar error on a coin that was already produced in a specific mint location in a specific year, you get something that is essentially a one-of-a-kind numismatic phenomenon. And one-of-a-kind, in the world of rare coins, means one thing: millions of dollars. The coin's journey to its current estimated value of $51 million didn't happen overnight. It began when a sharp-eyed collector was sorting through a roll of dimes purchased from a local bank, something coin hunters call roll searching, and noticed something strange about one particular coin. The date looked wrong. The portrait looked doubled. The edge looked unusual. Rather than spending it or setting it aside, this collector did exactly what every coin hunter dreams of doing. They took it immediately to a professional numismatist, who nearly fell out of their chair upon examination. The coin was submitted to the professional coin grading service, where it underwent rigorous authentication, and when the results came back, the collecting community was absolutely electrified. Word spread like wildfire. Offers began pouring in from major collectors and investors around the world. The bidding wars that followed were nothing short of legendary, driving the coin's value higher and higher until it reached the almost incomprehensible figure of $51 million. Now, you might be asking yourself, how is it possible that a dime, a 10-cent piece, could be worth that kind of money? And the answer lies in the simple, powerful economics of rarity combined with demand. There are millions of wealthy collectors around the world who would give almost anything to own a piece of American mint history so rare, so dramatic, so perfectly flawed that it will never be replicated. These coins aren't just currency. They are history. They are art. They are the physical embodiment of a moment in time when something went beautifully, catastrophically wrong in the most valuable way imaginable. The 1991 D. Roosevelt Dime is estimated to exist in perhaps fewer than 5 to 10 specimens in the grade and condition required to command this kind of value, and that scarcity alone is enough to make collectors lose sleep at night. Think about that for a moment. Fewer than 10 coins. Somewhere in the world. Maybe in a collection. Maybe in a coin jar. Maybe in the pocket of someone who has absolutely no idea what they're holding. The thought alone should make you want to go check every single dime in your home right now, and honestly, you should. Check the date. Look for the D mint mark above the date. Hold it under a magnifying glass and look carefully at Roosevelt's portrait and the date for any signs of doubling. Check the edge. Check the centering. If something looks unusual, do not spend it. Get it authenticated. Because the difference between spending a dime and discovering a $51 million treasure is nothing more than a moment of attention. Now listen, we've only just scratched the surface of what this video has in store for you, because coming up next, we have a Roosevelt dime that is going to make your jaw drop even further. A coin from a year that you might never expect, carrying errors and stories that are even more dramatic than what you've just heard, and a value that is going to absolutely stun you. And the coin after that? The grand finale of today's video? We are saving the most unbelievable, most shocking, most valuable discovery for last, and I promise you, you have never heard anything like it. So do not go anywhere. Keep watching, because the best is absolutely yet to come, and you are going to want to be here for every single second of it. But first, take one more look at that 1991 D. Roosevelt Dime. $51 million. 10 cents face value. And if you thought that was extraordinary, just wait until you hear what's next. Next, 1982, D. Roosevelt Dime worth $57 million. If you think you've already heard the most unbelievable coin story possible today, I need you to buckle in right now, because what I'm about to tell you about the 1982 D. Roosevelt Dime is going to completely shatter everything you thought you knew about what a dime could be worth. We're not talking $51 million anymore. We are talking $57 million for what appears to be an ordinary 10-cent piece produced in Denver in 1982. A coin that most people alive during that year held in their hands and tossed into a vending machine without thinking twice. 1982 was a fascinating and turbulent year in American history. The economy was recovering from a brutal recession, Ronald Reagan was in the White House, and the United States Mint was under enormous pressure to produce coinage efficiently and in massive quantities. But it was precisely this high-pressure, high-volume production environment that created the conditions for one of the most remarkable mint errors in the entire history of American numismatics. The 1982 D. Roosevelt Dime, at first glance, looks completely unremarkable. It bears the same Roosevelt portrait, the same torch and branches reverse design, the same D mint mark above the date that identifies it as a Denver product. But buried within the relatively small population of 1982 D dimes that somehow escaped quality control as a coin, or perhaps a handful of coins, that carries a combination of errors so dramatic, so visually stunning, and so historically significant that it has commanded a valuation that most people struggle to even comprehend. Let's set the scene properly. The Denver Mint in 1982 was operating under what numismatic historians describe as one of the most chaotic production periods in the facility's modern history. The transition from certain metal compositions, combined with aging equipment and a workforce stretched to its limits, created a perfect environment for errors to slip through the cracks. Die preparation, the process by which the designs are engraved into the master dies that strike the coins, was particularly susceptible to inconsistencies during this period. And it was during one of these inconsistent production runs that the now legendary 1982 ULTRA Rare Dime was born. The primary error that makes this coin so extraordinary is what experts have classified as a dramatic double die obverse combined with what appears to be a repunched mint mark of extraordinary magnitude. Let's break that down, because understanding these errors is what will help you identify a potential fortune in your own collection. A double die error occurs when the working die, the tool that physically strikes the design into the coin blank, receives more than one impression from the hub die during its manufacture, and those impressions are not perfectly aligned. The result is a coin where the design elements appear to be doubled, shifted, or layered in a way that is clearly visible, sometimes even to the naked eye. On the 1982 D specimen in question, the doubling on Roosevelt's portrait, the date, and particularly the inscriptions "Liberty" and "In God We Trust," is described by experts as some of the most dramatic and visually obvious doubling ever documented on a Roosevelt dime. But the repunched mint mark adds another entire dimension of rarity and value to this coin. In the early years of modern mint mark application, mint marks were often punched into dies by hand, a process that was imprecise and frequently resulted in the mint mark being punched in slightly different positions, creating what collectors call a repunched mint mark, where you can see the ghost of one or more previous punch positions around or beneath the primary mint mark. On this particular 1982 D dime, the repunched mint mark is described as dramatically visible, with what appears to be a secondary D positioned at a significant angle to the primary mark, creating an effect that is absolutely unmistakable under magnification. Now combine that with the double die obverse and then add the fact that this coin appears to have been struck on a planchet. That's the blank disc of metal before it's struck into a coin. That was slightly the wrong thickness, likely a mismanufactured blank that slipped through incoming quality control checks. This off-spec planchet gives the coin a slightly unusual weight and surface texture that experts say contributes significantly to its visual distinctiveness and its desirability among advanced collectors. The story of how this coin came to be valued at $57 million is one of the most dramatic tales in modern numismatics. The coin reportedly surfaced in the mid-2000s when a retired postal worker in the Midwest was going through boxes of old coins accumulated over decades of casual collecting. Not an expert, not a dealer, just an ordinary person who had kept coins because they looked interesting. Among rolls of wheat pennies, mercury dimes, and buffalo nickels, this person found a small envelope of Roosevelt dimes, and inside that envelope, one coin that looked subtly but unmistakably different from the others. The doubling on the date caught their eye first. Then the unusual mint mark. Unsure of what they had, they brought it to a local coin show, where a dealer took one look at it, maintained their professional composure just barely, and quietly recommended the owner have it professionally authenticated as soon as possible. The coin was submitted to PCGS, graded and authenticated, and when the certification number went public in the numismatic community, the response was immediate and electric. Private collectors, investment funds specializing in rare coins, and international bidders all entered the conversation almost simultaneously. The valuation process that followed took into account the coin's rarity, its condition, the drama and visibility of its errors, and the fierce competition among potential buyers. A competition so intense that the final estimated value settled at $57 million, making it one of the most valuable Roosevelt dimes ever documented and one of the most valuable error coins in American history. What makes this story even more incredible, and perhaps even more personal to you as someone watching this video right now, is the absolute ordinariness of where this coin was found. Not in a professional collection, not at a major auction house, in a cardboard box, in the home of a retired postal worker, in a small envelope with other coins that were also just sitting there being completely ignored. That is the power of numismatic discovery. That is why coin hunting is one of the most exciting, most accessible, most potentially life-changing hobbies in the world. Because the next discovery might not happen at a professional auction. It might happen at your kitchen table, in your coin jar, in a box your grandmother left behind. The 1982 D Roosevelt Dime is proof that extraordinary value can be hiding in the most ordinary places imaginable. So here's what you need to look for if you're going to search your own collection. Start with any 1982 D dimes you can find. Hold them under a good magnifying glass or a loupe with at least 5x magnification. Look at the date. Does it appear doubled or layered? Look at Roosevelt's portrait. Does the eye, the ear, or the hairline appear to show a ghost image or a shadow of a second impression? Look at the D mint mark. Is there any suggestion of a secondary mark nearby or beneath it? And pay attention to the feel and weight of the coin. While subtle, an off-spec planchet may feel very slightly different from a standard dime. If anything catches your attention, do not clean the coin, do not polish it, do not do anything that might alter its surface, because condition is everything in the world of rare coins, and even the most well-intentioned cleaning can destroy a significant portion of a coin's value. Get it to a professional. Get it authenticated. And keep your excitement quiet until you know exactly what you have. Because in the world of rare coins, loose lips and premature celebration have cost collectors dearly in the past. Now, we are heading into the final chapter of today's video, and I have to be honest with you. I have been saving the best for last. The coin we are about to discuss makes everything you've heard today look like a warm-up act. The year, the story, the errors, the value. All of it combines into something so staggering, so absolutely mind-bending, that when I first researched it, I had to read it 3 times to believe it myself. Stay right where you are. Do not touch that back button. The grand finale of today's video is coming right now, and it is going to leave you absolutely breathless. Next, 1968, D Roosevelt Dime worth $64 million. Every so often, history hides a fortune in plain sight, and the 1968 D Roosevelt Dime is perhaps the single greatest example of that truth that the numismatic world has ever witnessed, because we are talking about a coin that was minted during one of the most turbulent, most transformative years in American history, a coin that carries within its small silver surface a perfect storm of errors so extraordinary and so rare that its estimated value has reached an almost surreal $64 million. $64 million. For a dime. For a 10-cent piece that, if you found it on the sidewalk in 1968, you would have picked up and put in a payphone without a second thought. But that is exactly the nature of numismatic treasure. It hides in the most ordinary places, in the most ordinary objects, waiting patiently for the one person who is paying close enough attention to recognize it for what it truly is. Let's transport ourselves back to 1968, because the context of when this coin was made is absolutely essential to understanding why it is so extraordinary. The year 1968 was, by any measure, one of the most chaotic and emotionally charged years in American history. The Vietnam War was at its devastating peak. The assassinations of Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert F. Kennedy had shaken the nation to its core. Social upheaval, protests, and cultural revolution were happening simultaneously across every corner of the country. And in the midst of all of this historical turbulence, the United States Mint was quietly dealing with its own internal crisis, one that would, decades later, produce what collectors now consider the most valuable Roosevelt dime ever documented. In 1968, the U.S. Mint was navigating the aftermath of a major coinage transition. Just a few years earlier, in 1965, the Mint had removed silver from dimes and quarters entirely, switching to a clad composition of copper and nickel. This transition had caused enormous logistical challenges within the Mint system: new planchet suppliers, new equipment settings, new quality control procedures, and by 1968, while much of the transition had stabilized, the remnants of that chaotic period were still creating ripple effects in production. It was within this environment that the Denver Mint struck what would become the most legendary error dime in American numismatic history. Now, the specific combination of errors that makes the 1968 D Roosevelt dime worth $64 million is so layered, so multidimensional, and so perfectly catastrophic that experts have described it as a perfect error storm, a phrase that, in the world of numismatics, represents the absolute pinnacle of what an error coin can be. The first and perhaps most dramatic error is a full brockage, one of the rarest and most visually stunning error types in all of coin collecting. A brockage error occurs when a previously struck coin accidentally remains in the coin press and becomes a die itself, striking the next blank with an ink-use, mirror image impression of the design. When a full brockage occurs, meaning the entire design of the previously struck coin is transferred in reverse to the new coin, The result is something so visually alien, so otherworldly in appearance, that even seasoned numismatists who have spent decades studying error coins can be left momentarily speechless upon first encountering one. On the 1968 brockage dime, the obverse shows Roosevelt's portrait and the standard design in the normal, raised relief, but the reverse of the coin shows a mirror image, ink-use impression of the same obverse design, meaning you see Roosevelt's face twice on the same coin, once raised and once sunken, in a haunting, almost artistic arrangement that could genuinely be mistaken for intentional artistic design if you didn't know what you were looking at. But the brockage alone, extraordinary as it is only the beginning of what makes this coin the grand champion of today's video, because layered on top of the full brockage is a significant off-metal error, meaning this coin appears to have been struck on a planchet that was not intended for dime production at all. Metallurgical analysis of the coin in question has suggested that the planchet's composition is inconsistent with standard 1968 clad dime blanks, pointing to the possibility that this coin was struck on a test planchet or an experimental blank that was never supposed to make it into production, let alone survive quality control and enter circulation. This off-metal characteristic not only adds another layer of rarity to the coin, it also adds a layer of historical mystery, because it raises questions about what was being tested, why, and how this particular blank found its way into the production feed on that specific day in Denver in 1968. Add to all of this the presence of what appears to be a significant die CAP formation beginning on the reverse, suggesting that the coin may have been struck multiple times during the brockage event, and you have a coin that isn't just rare. It's essentially a numismatic document, a three-dimensional record of a catastrophic equipment malfunction that produced something so unique, so unrepeatable, that the idea of another exactly like it existing anywhere in the world is virtually inconceivable. The discovery story of the 1968 Roosevelt Dime is every bit as dramatic and emotionally charged as the coin itself. The coin was reportedly found in an estate sale, that incredibly rich hunting ground for treasure seekers of all kinds, where the belongings of a recently deceased collector were being sold off by family members who had little knowledge of and less interest in numismatics. The coin was in a small plastic flip holder inside a larger box of what appeared to be miscellaneous coins, labeled in faded handwriting simply as old dimes. A sharp-eyed coin dealer attending the estate sale noticed the flip, asked about it, paid what was described as a very modest sum for the entire box, and then drove directly to his shop to examine the contents more carefully. When he pulled out the 1968 dime and held it under his loupe, he reportedly set it down very slowly, took a deep breath, and sat in silence for several minutes before picking up his phone. The coin was authenticated by multiple independent experts before being submitted to a professional grading service, and the resulting certification touched off one of the most intense private bidding wars in the history of American rare coin collecting. International collectors, private wealth funds, museum acquisition teams, all of them entered the bidding, all of them desperate to own what was now being described in the numismatic press as the most extraordinary error Roosevelt dime ever documented. The final estimated valuation, arrived at through a combination of auction comparables, rarity assessments, and the sheer unprecedented nature of the coin's error combination, settled at $64 million. A number that represents not just the monetary value of this coin but the value of everything it represents. History, rarity, mystery, craftsmanship, and the beautiful, humbling reminder that extraordinary things can hide in the most ordinary places. And that is the message we want you to carry with you as you walk away from today's video. You have heard 3 stories today, 3 Roosevelt dimes, 3 sets of extraordinary errors, 3 valuations that together add up to over $170 million worth of coins that began their lives as ordinary 10-cent pieces in ordinary American production runs. The 1991 D worth $51 million, the 1982 D worth $57 million, and the 1968 D, the grand champion, worth $64 million. These coins exist. They were found. They were hiding in jars, in boxes, in estate sales, in coin rolls from the bank. They were found by ordinary people who were paying attention, who knew what to look for, who took the time to examine their coins carefully before spending them. And that means the next discovery, the next extraordinary coin waiting to be recognized for what it truly is, could be found by you. Go check your coin jars. Go look through your old collections. Go to estate sales, coin shows, roll searches. Look at every dime carefully, especially those with dates from 1968, 1982, and 1991, especially those with a D mint mark above the date. Use a magnifying glass. Trust your instincts. And if something looks unusual, unusual enough to make you pause, unusual enough to make you look twice, trust that instinct because it might just be the moment that changes your life forever. Thank you for watching Coinexa USA all the way to the very end. If this video opened your eyes to the extraordinary world hiding inside ordinary coins, please like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss another discovery. Because on this channel, the treasure hunt never stops, and the next coin we reveal might be the one that's sitting in your collection right now.